moment he saw the fleet, he knew his country had already lost the war. June 6th, 1944. Just after 5 o'clock in the morning, the Normandy coast. Corporal Franz Gockel raised his binoculars to his eyes. The leather strap was cold against his neck. The focus wheel clicked as he turned it. Gray sea, morning mist. He panned left. Still nothing. He panned right. Then he stopped. A dark shape sat on the horizon. Just one. He adjusted the focus. The shape sharpened. A ship. He kept panning. Another ship. Then another. Then 10 more. Then 50. Then he stopped counting. The entire horizon had disappeared. In its place, a solid wall of steel stretched as far as he could see in either direction. Gockel lowered the binoculars. His hands were shaking. He raised them again. The fleet was still there. It was closer now. He tried counting. 20, 50, 100, 200. He stopped. There were too many. His heart hammered against his ribs. He grabbed the field telephone. The receiver slipped in his sweaty palm. Command post. Command post. This is observation post 62. A tired voice answered. What is it, Gockel? The invasion fleet is here. Thousands of ships. The entire channel is covered. Silence. Then the voice came back, dismissive. Gockel, are you drunk? The weather conditions make an invasion impossible. Return to your post. Gockel looked through the binoculars again. The ships were even closer. He could make out individual vessels now. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers. And behind them, an endless swarm of smaller craft. I'm looking at it right now, Gockel said. His voice cracked. For God's sake, look at the sea. He slammed the phone down. Franz Gockel was 23 years old. He'd been born in Munich. Before the war, he'd worked as a baker's apprentice. He'd been stationed at this concrete bunker overlooking Omaha Beach for 6 months. He knew every inch of this coastline. He knew the tides. He knew the weather patterns. He knew the fields of fire for his MG-42 machine gun, but nothing had prepared him for this. In less than 3 hours, his bunker would open fire. American soldiers would fall in the surf below. Bodies would pile up at the water's edge. The sand would turn red. For 30 terrible minutes, it would look like Germany might actually win. But right now, at this exact moment, Franz Gockel was watching something he couldn't fight. Every bunker on the Atlantic wall, every mine, every gun, every soldier Germany had in France. It wouldn't be enough. Not against this. This is his story. This is the morning the Third Reich died. This is D-Day through German eyes. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. To understand what Franz Gockel saw that morning, we need to go back. Back to before the fleet appeared. Back to when the war still seemed winnable. June 5th, 1944, 5 o'clock in the morning. The same bunker, the same beach. Gockel woke to the sound of waves. He stretched in his narrow bunk. Another day, another watch, another morning, staring at empty water. He had no idea this was his last peaceful morning. He pulled on his boots and grabbed his rifle. Outside the bunker, the air was cool and damp. A storm had blown through during the night. The channel was rough. White caps dotted the gray water. His position commander, Sergeant Heinrich Severloh, was already awake. He stood at the observation slit with a cup of coffee. Rough seas, Severloh said. Too rough for an invasion, Gockel replied. Severloh nodded. That's what headquarters says. Weather like this, the Allies can't launch. We're safe for at least a week. Safe, the word hung in the air. Gockel had been hearing that word for 6 months. The Atlantic wall was safe. The beaches were safe. The defenses were impenetrable. Safe, safe, safe. But Gockel had seen the Atlantic wall up close. He knew the truth. The bunkers were solid enough. Thick concrete, steel reinforcement. His position, strong point WN62, was one of the best on Omaha Beach. It had a commanding view of the entire landing zone. His MG-42 could sweep the beach from left to right. Every approach was covered, but the wall had gaps, huge gaps. Between his position and the next strong point was 400 yards of empty beach. The minefields were incomplete. Many bunkers were still under construction. The promised reinforcements never arrived. The 352nd Infantry Division was supposed to defend 34 kilometers of coastline. That was one soldier every 6 meters. Against whatever was coming. Gockel knew the numbers didn't add up. He'd served on the Eastern Front. He'd seen what happened when you spread your forces too thin. He'd watched entire divisions get surrounded and destroyed. He knew the difference between propaganda and reality. The Atlantic Wall looked impressive on paper. In reality, it was a thin crust over a hollow core. But that morning, none of it mattered. The storm was keeping the Allies away. The invasion wouldn't come today. Maybe not this week. Maybe not this month. Gockel cleaned his machine gun. He ate breakfast with the other men in his bunker. Black bread, ersatz coffee, a thin slice of cheese. The bread was dense and sour. Nothing like what he used to bake in Munich. That felt like a different life, a different person. They talked about home, about families, about what they'd do after the war. Heinrich Severloh showed Gockel a letter from his mother. She'd sent him a photograph. His younger sister had gotten married. "She looks happy," Gockel said. "She is," Severloh replied. "The war hasn't touched their village yet." Yet, that word carried weight. But 12 miles offshore, something was happening that would change everything. American soldiers were preparing for the crossing, loading equipment, checking weapons, writing final letters home. The invasion Gockel thought was impossible was already beginning. He just didn't know it yet. The morning passed quietly. Gockel stood watch from 6 o'clock to noon. He saw nothing but empty water, gray waves, occasional seabirds. At noon, he was relieved. He went back to the bunker and slept for a few hours. When he woke, the wind had picked up. The storm was getting worse. Rain began to fall, heavy, cold drops that turned the soil to mud. Perfect invasion weather, he thought sarcastically. The Allies would have to be insane to launch in this. That evening, the mood in the bunker was almost relaxed. The worst of the storm had passed, but the seas were still rough. Headquarters had issued a formal assessment. No invasion possible for at least 7 days. Some of the officers had even gone on leave. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, the commander responsible for defending the entire Atlantic coast, had left France that morning. He'd gone back to Germany. It was his wife's birthday. He planned to give her a pair of shoes, then drive to Berlin to ask Hitler for more tanks. If Rommel thought it was safe to leave, then it was safe. The men played cards that evening. Someone had a bottle of schnapps. They passed it around. Not enough to get drunk, but enough to take the edge off. Gockel thought about writing a letter home. He decided against it. What would he say? Another day of waiting. Another day of staring at empty water. Nothing to report. At 10 o'clock that night, Gockel went to sleep. His bunk was hard, but he was used to it. The sound of rain on the bunker roof was almost soothing. He closed his eyes. He had 7 hours left. He didn't know that 12 miles offshore, 156,000 Allied soldiers were climbing into ships. He didn't know that despite the rough seas, despite the storm, despite every weather forecast saying it was impossible, the invasion was launching anyway. At 1:30 in the morning, thousands of paratroopers began dropping inland, scattered drops across Normandy. Some landed in flooded fields and drowned. Some landed in villages and were captured immediately. Some landed exactly where they were supposed to. The first reports reached German headquarters at 3:47 in the morning. Paratroopers, inland, multiple locations. The duty officer woke the regimental commander. The commander was skeptical. Paratroopers? In this weather? It had to be a mistake. Maybe a few planes blown off course. Maybe a small raid. It couldn't be the invasion. Not in these conditions. Not at night. Not here. He made a decision. The reports were probably exaggerated. He would wait for dawn, get better information, then respond. It was the last good decision he would ever make, and it was completely wrong. By 3 o'clock in the morning, landing craft were being loaded offshore. Soldiers climbed down rope nets into small boats. The seas were rough. Men vomited over the sides. Equipment got wet. Some boats swamped and had to turn back. But most kept going. Toward the beach, toward Gockel's bunker. At 5 o'clock in the morning, Franz Gockel woke up for his watch. He pulled on his boots, grabbed his rifle, walked to the observation post. He raised his binoculars and saw the end of the world. Which brings us back to here, back to the moment, back to the fleet that filled the horizon. Just after 5 o'clock in the morning, Franz Gockel, staring at an impossibility, he turned from the observation slit and shouted to the bunker, "Everyone up, now!" Men stumbled out of their bunks, confused, half asleep. "What's happening?" "Look for yourself," Gockel said. One by one, they looked through the observation slits. One by one, their faces changed. Confusion became disbelief. Disbelief became fear. How many? Someone asked. I stopped counting, Gockel said. Heinrich Severloh grabbed his own binoculars. He scanned the horizon slowly, methodically, left to right, then back again. When he finally lowered them, his face had gone pale. Get the guns ready, he said quietly. Load every magazine. Bring up all the ammunition from storage. The men moved slowly at first, then faster as reality set in. Their hands shook as they loaded belts of ammunition into the MG-42. 7,000 rounds, every bullet they had. Gockel tried the field telephone again. Different command post, different officer, same response. Impossible, the weather forecast said. I don't care what the forecast said, Gockel shouted. I'm looking at it right now. A pause. Then, a different voice came on the line. An officer who chose to believe his eyes instead of his reports. Hold your position, the voice said. Tight, controlled. Prepare to engage. I'm alerting regimental command. The phone went dead. Gockel looked at his watch. Nearly 5:45 in the morning. He'd been staring at the fleet for 40 minutes. It felt like hours. He raised his binoculars again. The ships were closer now. Much closer. He could see details he couldn't see before. Gun turrets rotating, radar dishes spinning, flags snapping in the wind. And behind the warships, the landing craft formed up in lines, hundreds of them, each one carrying 30 men. Gockel did the calculation in his head without meaning to. 30 men times 100 craft, 3,000 soldiers, just in the first wave. And there were more waves behind them. Where's the Luftwaffe? Someone asked. Gockel scanned the sky. Empty, completely empty. Not a single German plane. He didn't know that on this day, the German Air Force would fly 319 sorties over all of France. He didn't know the Allies would fly 14,674. He didn't know that for every German plane in the sky, there would be 46 Allied ones. But he didn't need to know the numbers. The empty sky told him everything. Just before 6 o'clock in the morning, the horizon lit up. Muzzle flashes from a dozen battleships, bright orange blooms against the gray dawn. Take cover, Severloh shouted. Gockel watched the flashes. 5 seconds passed. Then the sound reached him, a rolling thunder that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Then the shells arrived. The first impacts were inland, ranging shots. The naval gunners were finding their targets, getting their distances right. Then the shelling became methodical, systematic, professional. Shells screamed overhead like freight trains passing at full speed. Each one weighed as much as a small car. Each one carried enough explosive to demolish a building. They fell in patterns, grids, one bunker, then the next, then the next. A position 200 yards to Gockel's left exploded. The bunker that had stood there for 2 years was gone in 3 seconds, just a crater and scattered chunks of concrete. Another explosion, closer, another bunker erased. The Allied gunners were working their way down the coast, checking off targets one by one. Gockel's bunker shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The single light bulb swung wildly on its cord. Outside, the world was fire and smoke and dirt geysering into the air. And through it all, the fleet kept coming. Around 6:30 in the morning, the bombardment shifted. The shells stopped falling on the bunkers. They began falling on the beach itself, on the obstacles, on the mines, on the wire. They were clearing a path. Gockel knew what that meant. He checked his machine gun, loaded the first ammunition belt, settled into position behind the weapon. His hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. He watched the first landing craft approach the beach. The ramps dropped. American soldiers stepped into the surf. 30 men per boat, weighted down with equipment, moving slowly through waist-deep water. Gockel's finger found the trigger. Fire, Severloh said quietly. The MG-42 roared to life. 1,200 rounds per minute. The sound was like ripping cloth, magnified 1,000 times. Gockel fired in bursts. 3 seconds on, 1 second off, just like training. He aimed at the mass of men, not at individuals. There were too many for individuals. The water around the landing craft turned white with bullet impacts. Then it turned red. Men fell. Some disappeared under the waves. Some crawled toward the beach. Some didn't move at all. In one of those landing craft, a 19-year-old from Ohio clutched his rifle. He'd never fired it in combat. In 2 minutes, he'd be dead. Gockel never saw his face. Another landing craft hit the beach. Another ramp dropped. More men stepped into the water. Gockel kept firing. The gun barrel began to glow. Steam rose from the cooling jacket. Empty shell casings clattered at his feet. He stopped thinking, stopped seeing people, just shapes, movement, targets. If he'd thought about what he was doing, he couldn't have continued. Other machine guns, up and down the bluff, joined in. The beach became a killing ground. Americans pinned at the water's edge, bodies in the surf, the sand dark with blood. For 30 minutes, the defense held. Gockel changed to his second ammunition belt. 1,000 rounds fired. The Americans were still coming. His shoulder ached. The gun barrel glowed orange in the dim bunker. Steam hissed from the cooling jacket. Third belt, fourth belt. His hands moved without thinking now. Load, aim, fire, adjust, fire again. Fifth belt. That's when Gockel noticed the pattern. For every landing craft, his bunker stopped. 2 more beached behind it. For every group his gun cut down, another group took their place. He wasn't winning. He was just slowing them down. Sixth belt, seventh belt. His ears had stopped ringing. Not because the noise had lessened, he just couldn't hear anymore. By the 8th belt, he'd stopped counting casualties, stopped hoping they'd retreat, stopped believing the ammunition would be enough. He'd become a machine, servicing a machine. Then something changed. Through the smoke, Gockel saw a destroyer moving toward shore, closer than any ship should come, dangerously close. It stopped less than 1,000 yards offshore, close enough that Gockel could see sailors on the deck. The destroyer's guns elevated, not toward targets inland, toward the bunkers on the bluff, toward him. "Get down!" someone shouted. The destroyer fired. The first shell hit 50 yards away. The explosion was enormous, far bigger than anything Gockel had experienced. The second shell hit 30 yards away, closer. The third shell hit the bunker next to his. The explosion threw Gockel against the wall. His ears went dead. The world became muffled and distant. He shook his head, looked around. 2 of his crew were down. The fourth shell came through the observation slit. It deflected off the concrete lip, but the explosion inside the bunker was catastrophic. Gockel was thrown backward. When he looked up, his machine gun was destroyed. Twisted metal, broken mechanisms. Severlo was on the ground, bleeding. The gun was silent. Gockel crawled to the observation slit. His vision blurred, his head pounded. On the beach below, American soldiers were moving forward. Without his gun to pin them down, they were advancing. His bunker had killed hundreds. He'd fired nearly 8,000 rounds. None of it had mattered. The landing craft were still coming, wave after wave, and behind them, the fleet waited. Thousands of ships, endless reinforcements. Gockel sat with his back against the concrete wall. Through the observation slit, he could see more landing craft approaching the beach, and behind them, more ships. And behind those ships, more ships still, stretching to the horizon. They would never stop coming. June 7th, 1944, 9:20 in the morning. American soldiers reached WN-62. Gockel and the survivors raised their hands. An American soldier entered the bunker. He was young, maybe 20, covered in sand and blood, his own or someone else's. Gockel couldn't tell. He looked at Gockel, then at the destroyed machine gun, then at the pile of shell casings. 8,000 rounds fired. The American walked to the observation slit, looked down at the beach, at the bodies still floating in the surf. He turned back to Gockel. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then the American gestured toward the exit. "Let's go." His voice wasn't angry, just tired. Gockel stood. His legs were shaking now, though they'd been steady all morning. He was led outside. Through the observation slit one last time, he could see the beach. The landing craft that had filled him with dread yesterday were now parked casually on the sand, unloading trucks, supplies, more men. They weren't even using cover anymore. Franz Gockel survived the war. He spent 2 years in a prisoner camp. He returned to Germany in 1946. He gave interviews decades later about that morning. He wore the uniform of a regime that committed unspeakable crimes. That complexity haunted him and many German veterans who survived. But what haunted him most was something else. According to accounts from German defenders of Omaha Beach, they shared a common feeling. They had killed so many, done everything soldiers could do, followed their training, fought with discipline and courage, and it hadn't changed anything. The Americans who stormed that beach showed extraordinary courage. Most had never seen combat. They walked into a hell of machine gun fire and kept coming. Hundreds died, thousands more took their place. The bunker at WN62 still stands today. You can visit it, stand where Gockel stood, look out at the same view he saw that morning. The observation slit is empty now. The machine gun is gone. Only the concrete remains. And if you look carefully at that concrete, you can still see the marks. Impact craters from naval shells, pockmarks from bullets, scars from the morning 7,000 ships appeared on the horizon. Gockel's bunker had been built to withstand any attack from the sea. It had thick walls, clear fields of fire, trained crews, adequate ammunition. It fell anyway, not on June 6th. The bunker survived that day. American soldiers captured it intact on June 7th. But everything it represented, the Atlantic Wall, the fortress, the idea that concrete and courage could stop what was coming, that died on the morning of June 6th, the moment Gockel saw the fleet. This is the War Maestro Chronicles, the bunkers that still stand, the scars still visible, the stories the concrete remembers. History remembers D-Day as liberation, as heroism, as the beginning of the end. It was all those things. But Bunker WN62 remembers something different. 8,000 rounds fired, hundreds killed, and it didn't matter. The concrete is still there. The stories are fading. If you want more history told by what remains instead of what we choose to remember, subscribe. Your support keeps these monuments speaking. Thanks for watching.